If you're a beginner in Blender looking to expand your skill and experience, then you're in the right place. My name is Josh Bartels with 3 Division, and in the next few minutes we are going to learn how to make this snowman from scratch. Let's go. So let's build a snowman. If this is your first time in Blender and you have never used it before, then you might want to go check out our Blender Basics video on our YouTube channel in order to get oriented. But we're going to begin by selecting and deleting all of these items that are in the scene. I click select to drag and then hit X to delete, and you can follow along with my key presses down here in the bottom left corner of the screen. Let's begin by adding our first snowball. So I'm going to go to add with Shift and A and then select UV sphere. And then I'm going to go to my front view and drag this thing up just a bit like that. And now we've got our first sphere in our snowman. Let's make our next one, Shift and D. To duplicate that one, I'm going to move it up just a little bit and of course scale it down. And then let's get our head, Shift and D, and move it up. And let's make the head just a bit smaller like that. Somewhere in there, we're just going to put it somewhere where it feels pretty good. So let's adjust these. I'm going to go into my edit mode and then switch on the proportional editing so that I can kind of smash this whole thing up just a bit. So I want to grab it and move it up, this bottom vertex there. There we go. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go to my wireframe, grab this part, smash it down so that it looks like it's a little bit compressed. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. S, Shift, and Z to kind of squash it in. I'm going to grab this and move it down. I'm going to smash it a little bit. Let's not do it that way. I'm still going to use the proportional editing. I'm going to go to 1. Let's select this top face. Kind of grab it, move it down. Same with this bottom part, move it up. Not too bad. And then with the head, let's keep it a little bit rotund. Not quite as much squashing, but we'll squash it just a little bit on the Z-axis there to give it that little sense of being squashed in. And then I'm going to select this outer face loop here. Just kind of squash this one in a touch. I feel like it maybe needs a little bit of that. Okay, cool. I'm liking where these stand, so I'm going to select all of them, right click, shade smooth, and now we've got our main body of the snowman. And in order to make all of these work together, I'm going to actually select each of these with the biggest snowball on the bottom selected last, hit Control and J on my keyboard to join them into one object so that I can add a displacement modifier and affect all of them. So I'm going to go to my modifiers tab, add, generate, or let's do rather deform, and then displace. Now, this is displacing a minimum number of vertices, and I want to add vertices before the displacement. So let's add a generate subdivision surface modifier, and I'm going to grab this subdivision and move it just above the displacement. And now our displacement makes this thing look very chubby. So we're going to fix that by adding a texture. So hit new right here, and we're going to call this one snow. We'll probably use it for other items as well, but let's start with naming it snow. I'm going to go down here to this texture panel. And then let's change the type of texture that we're using to clouds. And now we have something like the abominable snowman. But we want to fix him and kind of make him a little bit cleaner. So let's drag the size, scale the size of the displacement up. And now he looks like a massive piece of cauliflower or something. But that's can be fixed by going back into the modifier tab now. And let's dial the strength of the effect down. So let's just have it very subtle. And you can see it's just giving that little bit of distortion and displacement that make it look like these are snowballs that have been packed by hand. And now that we kind of dial back this effect a little bit, we can see that we might even be able to scale up the texture, or scale down rather, and give it a little more rippled effect. And I think something in there is good. I'm about at 0.35 over here on my size for the cloud texture, and then I'm at a strength of 0.08. So that's looking pretty good for me. I think I'm going to leave it right there. Now we need to begin designing the other elements of our snowman. And let's begin with the thing that we would all begin with if we were actually making this in real life, and that is the eyes and the mouth. So of course we're going to grab a sphere again. So I'm going to go add, mesh, and UV sphere. So let's grab the sphere and move it up here. I'm going to scale it down until it's the size of something that looks approximate to an eyeball. And then I'm going to move around my scene so that I can move the eyes forward and ensure that they're sticking out here on the front of my face. I'm going to move it over here a little bit, move it forward. I might even take this top portion of the mesh and turn off the proportional editing and just smash it a little bit so that it's a little bit flatter on the front for the face. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to make sure that this eyeball is shaded smooth, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit and make sure it's in a good spot. Now I'm going to use the mirror modifier to help me maintain symmetricality across the what is this? This is the x-axis. So let's hit generate,
mirror modifier. Now nothing has happened because it's generating the modifier across its own origin. In order to change that, I'm going to inherit the snowman's origin by hitting this mirror object, selecting the snowman, and now it's mirroring across the snowman's point of origin, which is down here. So that's perfect. Let's go to the side view so that they're not sticking out too much, and let's just smash them there into the head. That looks pretty good for now, and we can always come back and adjust it later. Let's make a mouth. Now I'm just going to grab this one and Shift and D to duplicate it and just move it down because I want to use that mirror modifier as well. Now let's scale the mouth pieces down a little bit so they're kind of like pieces of coal here. And then I'm going to tab into edit mode and then just begin duplicating this in order to make our snowman smile. Now we don't want it to look too creepy, so let's try to move it together here, move it down. I'm gonna use L to select the entire parts of these spheres and then begin to move it all around where I want it to be. And once we've got it somewhere that looks good, and let's go to the side to make sure we've got it pressed into the snow evenly. I'm gonna actually pull this one out a little bit. Let's pull it forward. There we go. So now let's take a look at how this is coming together. I think that looks not too bad. We can always adjust later as needed once we get the rest of the elements on, and we can kind of get a sense of proportion. Let's add the nose. Let's go to Shift and A. I'm going to select let's use a cylinder for the nose. And then let's take this, I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis by hitting R and then X, and then typing in the numbers 90 so that we can rotate it 90 degrees. Then I'm going to grab it and move it up with the Z-axis. I'm going to go to my side view and just scale this thing down and kind of move it into place. Let's zoom in, scale it down until we've got a carrot nose that looks about the right size. And let's grab this front face. I'm going to move it out and then scale it down just a touch. Actually, let's scale it down just very little here to start with. All right, how are we looking? Not too bad. Maybe too long, though. I'm going to select the nose, S and Y, to kind of crunch it. And there we go. That's not bad. Shade smooth. But let's take these edges here and bevel them so that we kind of fix the smooth. Now, the bevel modifier or the bevel operation is not working like we want it to because we have a non-uniform scale. So I'm going to hit Control and A to apply the scale. And then now I can Control B, and the bevel is working better. And we can just kind of bevel that out to be pretty extreme. That way you've got a nice rounded nose on the end. In fact, I'm just going to scale it along the y-axis so that it kind of smashes in there. And let's put another loop cut here just to keep the shading good on that front. Now that looks nice. Let's kind of turn it back. I think we might even be able to scale that carrot nose up a bit. Yeah, that's good. Okay, there we go. We've got the snowman's eyes, the nose, the mouth, and now we need a hat. So let's go ahead and add a hat for our snowman here. Shift and A. Let's do a mesh and a cylinder. And for this cylinder, I want more detail in it to begin with, so let's change the cylinder options after we've added it, and that you'll find right down here. I'm going to change it from 32 vertices to 64 for the sides, and then we're ready to go. Let's grab this thing and just move it up. I'm going to hit G and Z to move it forward, and then I'm going to crush it down like this, and we're just going to start to get it in place, imagining that this is the top hat on our snowman. Now from the side view, I'm just going to kind of position the hat. Before we rotate it, let's go ahead and try to make this the size and position we want. So here's the brim of the hat. We don't want the brim too big. I'm going to apply the scale before I begin editing. I'm going to go to this top face and hit I for inset, and then just inset it a bit on the snowman's head, hit E, and then extrude it out, and now we've got a nice little top hat. Now our brim is not nearly big enough, so I'm going to select the outer edge loop with alternate and selecting one of those edges that's in between two faces to select the entire face loop. Let's hit Option and S, or alternate and S, and we'll scale it out a bit to add more of a brim to this hat, and I'm liking that. It's pretty good. Let's grab this part and pop it up. I think the brim could be even a little bit thinner. And let's just shade auto smooth so that we can kind of see how this is looking. That's not bad at all. Now let's go ahead and make a couple of detail adjustments to this thing. First of all, I want to add a bevel modifier. We want to have just a little bit of a bevel there on the edges, and let's make that something like 0.05, maybe even looks like we need to go smaller, 0.005. Yeah, that's good. That gives us that nice little bevel there, and on the inside, even though we can't see it right now. I'm going to change the segments to 2. And then let's go down here to the shading and harden the normals. And that looks pretty dandy. He's looking pretty sharp now. So I'm going to go to my side view and just rotate this hat a little bit on this guy. And then let's scale it up a little bit more. Actually, it looks like it needs to be scaled, like extended up here on the top. So I'm going to grab this one and do E for extrude and just make the hat a little bit taller. And then I'm just going to delete that edge loop since we don't really need it. And yeah, that's looking better from down here. Nice angle. Now I'm going to hit G, and then you can grab it and I can move it up and down. But if you want to move it on its original Z axis, as long as you haven't applied by hitting Control and A, haven't applied that rotation, then I can hit G and then hit Z and Z to move it on its local Z axis and kind of pull it off his head. Let's go to the side. I'm just going to try to position this in such a way that we see very little of this snow kind of coming through here, because we don't want to see that. In fact, I might even grab that edge loop there, hit GG to slide, and just slide it up a touch so that we're kind of cheating it. And then here on this inside, I'm going to select this face and hit I for inset, smash into where just around kind of the top of the head there. And in fact, I think we're not quite even big enough to recede up if we hit S. Yeah, okay, that's pretty close. So there's almost not even a reason to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So let's hit Shift and H with the hat selected so we can see what we're doing here. Tab back in edit mode. I'm going to select this edge loop and alternate and S to scale it in. And what this is doing now is giving us that inside brim of the hat. So I'm going to hit GZZ and then kind of pull it up, and now we've got a hat that looks pretty decent. But I'm going to now alternate and H to unhide everything else. And now we can kind of start to play with this. I'm going to tab in edit mode. Let's make sure we've got this edge loop that's right on the inside here selected. I should probably do this in this mode, GZZ. And I'm just going to pull kind of the interior of the hat up so that it gives a little bit of a angle as it kind of comes out away from the main part of the hat. Okay, so now I don't want rendered mode. Let's go to alternate and H to unhide. Now our snowman is looking pretty dandy. Grab it and move it down just a touch on his brim. That looks good. In fact, I think we might need to pull his eyes up just a touch more, and his nose. No, the nose might work. Whole mouth up. Yeah, I think moving the whole face up just a touch helps it out. Let's move it down just a little bit more. And this is just a taste. You're really just trying to get a feel for where you want it to be and what you think looks good. But yeah, now we've got this together. Everything is looking very dandy. I think we are on target to make this look really nice. Now, let's add some arms to this guy. I'm going to hit Shift and A on my keyboard, and I'm going to add just a regular plane, and then grab it and move it up. And then we're going to go to front view and move it over here to the side. I'm going to add a generate modifier and add a mirror. And then we're going to change the mirror object to the snowman again so that we're copying across the x-axis. Now, here's what we're going to do. Tab into edit mode, S to scale, move everything down. In fact, I'm just going to scale it and smash it all together. Hit A, hit M for merge, and I want to merge at center. And now we have one single vertex here that is a part of our mesh. So let's take this vertex. I'm going to move it just inside of the snowman's body. And then with that vertex selected, make sure you're in vertex mode. I'm going to hit E to extrude, and we're going to start kind of drawing a little bit of an arm on this guy. I'm going to grab the individual vertices and kind of extrude separate pieces. And that looks pretty good. Let's grab this one and move it back just a touch. I'm going to grab this elbow kind of piece, give it a little bit of a nudge there. And then what we're going to do is add what's called a skin modifier. So hit generate, and then we're going to look down here for skin. And now the whole thing has gone wacko. Now, here's why this has happened. That's because our scale is off. So go into, first of all, apply the scale so that we've got correct scale. And then select the whole thing and hit Control and A with all of those vertices selected. And that will allow you to scale the thickness of the skin. So with edit mode enabled and all of the vertices selected, you can hit Control and A to scale them. And now you can even go back in and scale individual vertices. So I could grab this part of the arm and hit Control A and individually scale these different parts. Now, this doesn't look very good. It's obviously very blocky. In order to fix that, I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier to give us that kind of stick-like feel. And I'm going to shade this smooth, and if that doesn't seem to work, you can shade it auto smooth and then go down here and click ignore sharpness and change the angle to something like 180, and now that will smooth shade the whole thing. Now what I'm going to do is grab this vertex and move it around. I want these fingers not to be creating bad geometry here, and I don't want them to be very even either. I kind of want them to be a little bit spread out and looking like they're just twigs on a tree. And in fact, I might even go back in here to this piece down here Let's see, go to wireframe and then hit E and extrude just like a little knob on the tree. Maybe just to give it a little bit of a elbow almost. It almost looks like a terrible little bicep. So maybe I'm not going to do that. But anyway, you can go in and make your tree branch however you want. You can subdivide, add additional vertices, and kind of break it up a touch. And then now we've got some cool little arms on our snowman. If you want to make them unique, then what I would recommend doing is applying this mirror modifier, and then you can go in and adjust each arm on an individual basis so that both of the arms don't look exactly the same. And then you can just kind of tweak them to your own liking here. And that gives you a little bit of difference in terms of what they look like. I'm going to actually delete that vertex, grab this one, extrude down and out a little bit to kind of give it a little bit of a different look on this side. And there we go. Now with that done, I'm going to add a little bit of texture to this arm using the same technique we used earlier with a displacement modifier. So let's hit deform, add a displace, and of course now he's got bulking huge arms. We need to scale that down, but not before we've added a texture. So let's hit new, and I'm going to call this one arms, and then we're going to go to the texture, and we're going to change that just a little bit here too. We're going to go back to clouds, and then let's go back to our material before we adjust the size of them and dial the strength back to something like 0.01. And then with shift select, I'm just going to affect the thickness of this effect here. It looks like we need to be somewhere around 0.01 or maybe 0.03, where we get a little bit more variety coming in. And then I think we can go to this texture now, and even let's try scaling it down so that we get more kind of frequency in the effect. And then let's go back up here to the subdivision. We probably need a little bit more detail in there. Yeah, we do. Let's add another level of subdivision, and then let's change the strength of this to 0.01, maybe even 0.005. And then now we've got that little bit of texture showing up here on the displacement, and that's pretty good. In fact, I'm going to go back to my size and do something like 0.01 and see how that works. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so that just gives us just a little bit of variation in the arms so that they look like sticks. Now what we need to do next is add some material to all of these different objects. So let's begin with the main thing. Let's begin with the snow. I'm going to switch into a cycles render engine. I'm going to add a large area light here on the scene, rotate it along the X, move it backwards just a little bit, and just let's go, not scale it up, but let's go in here to the size and bump the size up to something like, looks like I'm going around 10 meters, just so that I can see this pretty clearly. And then the power output, I'm going to go to something like 500, and let's switch to rendered view and see how that does. It looks like we might even need a little bit more power, so let's go to 1000, and that should work for us. I'm going to add a plane so that we get a little bit of light kickback up into the eyes of the snowman. Okay, so let's select our snow. I'm going to add a new material, call this one snow. Then let's make sure that that is all the way white, and maybe just move it a little bit in the bluish direction, just ever so slightly, so it's got just a little bit of that bluish tint, like it's kind of iced over. As far as the rest of the properties go, let's make the roughness somewhere down around 0.15. Oh, not 15, 0.15. There we go. And it gives it a little bit of that reflectivity, which is exactly what we want. And then let's move on to the hat. I'm going to select the hat, hit new, type hat, and then we're going to change this to something dark, like almost black. And then let's make the roughness, let's see, somewhere around 0.8, because this is a cloth fabric hat. And that looks pretty good. I'll stick with that for now. Let's select the eyes. Now hit new, I'm going to type in eyes. And then the eyes, let's make all the way black. But let's make them almost entirely glossy, so something like 0.01 for the gloss, so that then they've got really high reflectivity and can kind of catch some highlights of lights that we put in front of them to give them almost a faux sense of a pupil. Then let's get the nose. Type in carrot, and then I'm going to select the color, and we're going to, of course, move this into an orange direction. Pick the orange that you like the best. And then I'm probably going to set the roughness somewhere around maybe 0.4, make it a little bit shiny, but not much. And then let's imagine these are pieces of coal. So I'm going to type them in, or hit a new material, type it in the name coal. I'm going to make it a charcoal color, of course. And then let's take the roughness on this one, and let's take it to something like 0.8 again, something high, kind of like the hat. And then let's take the arms now. New, I'm going to call this one a wood material, and we're going to change it to something in the brown direction. So move down here toward the orange, and then pull the value back to create that kind of brown look. And there we go. That's not too bad. And then as far as the roughness goes here, maybe something like 0.8 again. Yeah, that works fine. Let's go 0.7 just so we have a little bit of variety there. Okay, I like it. We've got a snowman shaping up very nicely here. Now, before we render this, I just want to mention that we dive deeper into everything that I've showed you today and more in our Beginner's Guide to Blender course. So if you're looking to learn in a more structured way, be sure to check out our website. Now, we want to show this snowman off, so we're going to need a few things. First of all, we're going to need a camera. Now, once you've added a camera, just navigate to an angle that looks cool. I like kind of looking up at the subject, kind of like this is a massive snowman that we've created, and just kind of center it here in your frame. Hit Control Alternate and the number pad 0 on your keyboard, and that will snap the camera to your current view. Once the camera is snapped to your view, you can hit the Shift and the tilde key, which is the key just next to the number 1 up on the top left of your keyboard, just under the escape, and you can kind of aim the camera now right at our snowman, and that's pretty cool. Now, you can also do something that's fun. Select the camera with the camera selected, go down here and enable depth of field and select the focus object as the eyeballs, the spheres here that we have using as the eyeballs in our scene. And then we've lost the selection of my camera because I clicked the eyeballs, but you can get it again by either selecting the camera up here, or if you just select this edge of the frame, you'll select the camera as well. And now you can see it's selected by the fact that it's blue in the outliner, and we now have this camera data option. So let's select it. And then I want to change the f-stop to something like 0.6 maybe. Yeah, 0.6 works for me, and that gives a little bit of blur on the things in the distance, and it just kind of makes it look a little bit cleaner. Now, now that we have a camera set up, we can position the lights so that they look good. So I'm going to grab this light, I'm going to go to my overhead view and move it over to the side and just rotate it a bit. And we're going to have this light coming from behind. So there we go. I want to change the color of this light and push it in the direction of something a little bit more warm, so that we got kind of a warm firelight glowish light coming here. And then we're going to go to the front. I'm going to duplicate this light, rotate it by 180 degrees so it's aiming back the other direction, maybe even turn it a little bit more. And then I'm going to change the size or the shape of this one from a square to a ellipse. And right now it's all big and flat. I'm going to actually change the size down to 1 again. And then let's just aim it here, just kind of guesstimating here at the face. Because what this is going to do is going to give us that nice round pupil look in the eyeball that really helps sell it. And I want to make this even a little bit bigger, so I'm going to click and drag across both of these properties and change it to something like 5. And that looks really good in the eyeball. Now, what we want to do here, though, is pull it in a different color direction so that we get a little bit of color contrast in the way that our snowman is rendered. So I'm going to change the power to something like, let's see, 500 maybe? Oh, we could even go back like 150 maybe. Yeah, there we go. That's really, really nice. And then this kind of gives the sense that maybe he's standing on a porch almost and looking out into the distance. Now, I don't want this down here. Let's hide it and see how it affects the light. Okay, it doesn't really affect the light that much. It does cast light back up into the eyes, but when we hide it, I kind of like the dark, different contrast that shows up here in this front half of the image, and maybe we could even add a little bit more light now. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to reuse this here. So let's zoom out and grab our floor, and I'm going to rotate it on the X by 90 degrees and then move it back on the Y. And what this is going to do is it's going to become our backdrop of color. So I'm going to move it back far enough that it's not being, the light from the foreground is not falling on it. And then I'm going to change its color. So let's add a new material. I'm going to type in BG on this one for background. And then I'm going to push it somewhere maybe in like a green. Ooh, actually a green direction is kind of cool, but maybe something greenish blue. Almost like a cross teal direction. Yeah, that's nice. And we can even dial it back in terms of the brightness so that the snowman is more kind of in the foreground. And then now you can just adjust this to your liking. Add additional lights if you want to add a little bit of festivity to it. We can take this arm here. They're both kind of rotated in the same way. I'm going to grab it and move it up so it kind of looks like it's positioned differently. I'm going to go back to my rendered mode so I can see this. All right, so I've got some tearing here on this part of the mesh where the skin modifier is at work. So let's go ahead and fix that. And sometimes you just fix that by simply moving these vertices around a little bit. I'm going to switch to wireframe mode, grab that vertex and just kind of move it around. You can see it begins putting the mesh back where it needs to be, and that looks a little bit better. Back to my camera view just to make sure that works. I'm going to pull that finger down just a touch. So there we have it. Now we have our finished snowman. All we have to do is set our output settings. If we wanted to do something like a 920 by 920, then we could do a square shot and change the framing of the camera, or we can just return to the 1920 by 1080 default, hit F12 on the keyboard, and let it render. If your render seems to be taking forever, then it might be because you have too many samples enabled in the render settings. And all you have to do to change that is go down here to your render settings, change the max number of render samples to 200, and make sure this denoise is enabled, and you will be good to go.
If you found this helpful, then please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, and then share your finished renders over in our Discord server. We would love to see them.